What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another tropical forecast here, and in this video we're going to be talking about 14 and 13L here, as they have now became officially tropical depressions. So we have two tropical depressions, and then we also have upgraded that disturbance off the coast of Africa. So we have really a lot to talk about here. The National Hurricane Center now has cones for 13 and 14L. So this is actually going to be a very interesting video here, as the National Hurricane Center has cones on it, who can get impacted, cone, timing, strength, what atmospheric conditions are, what global models show. That's exactly what we'll be looking at into today's video with Tropical Depression 13 and Tropical Depression 14. Also looking whether they can possibly both make U.S. landfalls. 14 looks like it's going to hit Texas maybe, or Louisiana, and then Tropical Depression 13 possibly aiming for Florida, and then maybe a lot of the southeast. That's exactly what we're going to be watching in today's video. We're going to go through all those details. Before we get in the video, please subscribe if you're new, hit the like button, hit the post notification icon so you get notified as soon as I do the video, and also to show your awesome support. Without further ado, let's go into the tropical forecast. So here's a look now at the National Hurricane Center. Here we have Tropical Depression 13 and Tropical Depression 14 here. So we've had 14 Tropical Depressions so far. It's kind of crazy. But there's Tropical Depression 13 now at 35 miles an hour at 1,008 millibars and moving west-northwest at 21 miles an hour. So west-northwest is kind of what west-northwest is, kind of like that way. But honestly, really going to watch out for the potential threat that this may avoid the Caribbean islands, which means it could possibly strengthen more, meaning it could go more north. So we're really watching 13L very closely. Now Tropical Depression 14, that is the most recent update here, our most recent tropical depression. It is at 35 miles an hour, and it is actually at a lower pressure at 1,007 millibars, and is now moving west at 21 miles an hour. So these depressions are very similar, same winds, almost same pressure, and moving at the same speed, except different directions. So both moving 21 miles an hour around to the west. Here's our latest update here on this one off the coast of Africa. Has a 40% chance for the next 5 days, and a 20% chance for the next 48 hours. So I think this is actually a big concern here, as it has really gone to a medium chance really quickly here for development here. Let's go check out now satellite imagery on both Tropical Depression 13 and 14. So here's a look now at Tropical Depression 13 here, and as you see, looking pretty good here. Actually looking for a very interesting center right here, that low pressure. This is actually a very interesting tropical depression now. As you see, it looks pretty good. Actually, earlier today had a ton of convection, pinks, all of that, and it's kind of losing a little convection due to some dry air to the west of the system here. But this dry air should not affect this storm much. Actually, it should not affect the storm much like it did with Josephine, like it did with Gonzalo. This actually should be fine from the dry air, because it expected to possibly move out from that dry air in the next coming days. This is Invest 90. This is actually Tropical Depression 13. So check out now what it looks like on visible high resolution here to see exactly if this is actually holding up with this dry air. But there is a teeny little bit drier to the west of this low pressure system. So I'm pretty sure the system will not weaken or not fall apart from this. This is actually what it looked like earlier. So it actually looks very organized, a very organized tropical depression. And I see convection. It's trying to lose a little convection here. Obviously, it is losing its finest convection there, but it is trying to get its act together. It is trying to get back into business here, blowing up in convection. I actually expect this to be Tropical Storm Laura by the end of today here. So this is very interesting. Also, Marco could possibly form very soon as well. But this thing can actually load. That would actually be great. But yeah, as you see, the latest looks pretty good. It actually looks pretty decent here. Here's the biggest blow up of convection. This is actually where the low pressure is right here, or where it was. So it's kind of not exactly in the center of this whole cloud cover here. But let's actually wait for this to actually load. We're just going to go ahead and look at Tropical Depression 14L now. As you see, it did have a huge blow up convection, but it's actually about to go over land here, heading towards the Honduras coast. We actually have tropical storm watches for that as well here, so we're really watching this very closely. But as you see, we had actually a recent big blow of convection there on Tropical Depression 14, and now it's starting to lose that convection a little bit, as it's about to make contact with Lantern, Central America. So really watching it out very closely here, but definitely has a good amount of convection here on this latest run. As you see, it kind of all this convection kind of blowing up to the north now. So this actually isn't the most organized tropical depression, but it is trying to get there though. Both these depressions are losing some decent amount of convection, but really should be making getting it to act together here. As blowout convection could very well come back here, but let's go see what we had here recently. I see this thing had a blow up of convection all over the place. We had convection there. We had convection blowing up all over the place here with Tropical Depression 14 here. And look at that. I mean, it continued to blow up. So it was kind of having a whole freaking depression had convection all over the place, really. So it kind of really had very unorganized and organized at the same time here, but it was trying to get its act together though. But convection is starting to die down here as it is trying to encounter land or getting very close to land here. But we're really monitoring these depressions very soon, as these could actually form very soon here. This could possibly become Marco, and then 13L could possibly become most likely Laura by the end of today, maybe even this evening. So here's looking now at the National Hurricane Center cone on a Tropical Depression 13. As you see, they expected to possibly be a tropical storm at 8 o'clock tonight. So this will be possibly Laura very soon. We actually have tropical storm watches, though, for portions of the Lesser Antilles and the Windward Islands here. So really monitoring this extremely closely here. So yeah, we have tropical storm watches for portions of the Windward Islands, and we also have tropical storm watches for portions of Honduras. So you guys will see that in the next coming slides here. But as you see, the National Hurricane Center expects this to actually become a hurricane. I'm actually surprised they already have a hurricane on this, because the National Hurricane Center tends to really under forecast storms, but they expect it to possibly make landfall like on the northern Keys and go in the eastern Gulf. Honestly, guys, I really don't think that's gonna happen. This is what the National Hurricane Center is showing right here. This is basically the cone. So Miami, a lot of Florida here is in the cone, getting towards the Panhandle. So the National Hurricane Center expects it to possibly become a hurricane as late as Monday. I think it could become a hurricane earlier than that, in my opinion. And you see it going to possibly still become a hurricane even when making a landfall. But National Hurricane shows a hurricane landfall for Florida. But they showed tropical storm from now on to Sunday. I think this could possibly become a hurricane as early as Sunday, really. The catch is, guys, I actually think this will actually go a lot more north than the National Hurricane Center is showing. I'm actually kind of forecasting this possibly go like this, in my opinion. That's kind of what I'm forecasting. It's going to go more north, possibly make landfall between Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach. This is kind of what I'm forecasting here. This is kind of my opinion. The reason why I show that is because this is actually going to be named a lot sooner than models anticipated, obviously, and it's going to be avoiding a lot of lands, including Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Lesser Antilles. So it's going to lead that to go more north. And also that subtropical jet will kind of break off by Saturday, which is the reason why this storm was expected to possibly go to the Gulf. But that's what the National Hurricane Center says. Let's take a look at the tracks here, not cracks, the tracks here. As you see, this is what they show here. Obviously, we all saw yesterday. Yesterday, they all showed going to Cuba, not hitting Florida. And I said yet last night, expect these to move north by tomorrow. And look at this. Almost every single model showing this possibly going to Florida. So I actually expect this to once again actually move north. I expect that more tracks doing this, actually kind of going towards West Palm or Fort Lauderdale. I expect these tracks to continue to move slowly north each update here. But as you see, this is kind of the cone here. So, of course, it's back in Florida, back in business. I don't know why tracks. The reason why tracks showed it avoiding Florida last night is because they didn't really think this was going to form, or this was going to form a lot later than they expected. So, but here they are. A lot of models are showing Keys, the Key West area, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Homestead. But also a lot of models are showing this avoiding Puerto Rico, avoiding Lesser Antilles, avoiding the Hispaniola area. So if this happens, which it probably will, it's going to avoid a lot of lands, which means it's going to avoid a lot of weakening. So the stronger this is, the more north it goes. So I think this is definitely going to possibly go like this, in my opinion, or like something like this, where it kind of avoids Miami here. So a lot of tracks are showing like going over Miami, Fort Lauderdale, southeastern Florida, but really if we're going to see a landfall, in my opinion, I think it's going to be kind of West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, those general areas here. But obviously, the tracks, only 2 tracks show that out of a lot, so I'm not going to say 100%, but I do expect these tracks to move northward as we go through today. But as you see, they are showing a Florida landfall, though, and going into the eastern Gulf, so we'll see how that goes. Really, intensity here, so a lot of the tracks now, or a lot of the models get it to being a tropical storm within the next 12 hours here, so this could be actually a tropical storm most likely 8 p.m. today, as early as 5 p.m. Eastern. And as you see, a lot of models getting this to a hurricane, a lot of models. You're probably thinking, Adrian, what do you mean? If it's going to be a Category 1, it's going to hit Miami and go in the Gulf. Well, you know, global models and computer models don't tend to not over forecast or blow up when it becomes a tropical depression here. They try to maintain on the lower side. So I bet you guys that later today, if not tomorrow, more models will get this to a Category 2, gradually getting stronger here. But could be a hurricane as early as 72 hours, which is not Monday. So I do expect it to possibly become a hurricane as early as this weekend, not Monday. So I think the National Hurricane Center, the reason why they show it going into the eastern Gulf and Miami is because they show it strengthening a lot slower than anticipated, because this thing has very warm waters. If it's going to avoid land, it's going to really strengthen a good bit. But we even have 2 models getting into Cat 3 and one even getting this Cat 4. I'm not going to rule out the possibility of that, but definitely monitoring this very closely here. Let's check out now the timing here. As you see, Miami's under a 40 to 50% chance here for, I believe, seeing tropical storm force winds. So that's actually very high already here. But as you see, a lot of the Cuba area, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, those areas there, the Caribbean islands, you guys are under less than a 20% chance to see tropical storm force winds. I think as it gradually goes to get stronger, it will extend, but I don't see a direct landfall for any of these areas here. So if you're in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Lesser Antilles, Hispaniola, I think you guys will be fine. I think if anything, it's going to go right here and possibly go like that, or even more north, and it's actually going to bring more impacts here for the Bahamas area. So I think the Bahamas, if anything that's not in the U.S., I think the Bahamas will possibly get hit the hardest, and also areas like St. Parish. Let's check out now what also Tropical Depression 14L has now. As you see, tropical storm watches have been issued here for Honduras and Nicaragua for the coast of Central America, because it's going to get very, very close to making a landfall in those areas. And it's actually expected to possibly make landfall near Houston, Texas. So Texas, you guys could possibly see a landfall from here. Texas or Louisiana, really. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Louisiana. The reasoning why I wouldn't rule out Louisiana is because the more this strengthens, the more north it'll go. And it has very, very warm waters from the Yucatan Peninsula to Texas. So I think it could very well maybe strengthen a good bit to possibly end up in Louisiana. So if you're in Louisiana, if you're in Texas, I would really watch out for Tropical Depression 14. But we already got tropical storm watches there. And actually, the National Hurricane Center expects it to be 70 miles an hour right here. So that's actually a huge change from what global models are showing on intensity. So 70 miles an hour, very likely here. Maybe this could become a hurricane, not before it hits Yucatan, but after in the Gulf. So that's why Louisiana is not out of the picture, because if it does become a hurricane, which is going to be stronger than the National Hurricane Center shows, could slightly move north and just hit Louisiana. So Louisiana and Texas, you guys are definitely in the threat for Tropical Depression 14L here. It's expected to make a landfall as early as Saturday here for areas in the Mexico coast there. And expected to gradually move pretty fast at this point, but maybe slow down right before landfall. So big concerns. But as you see, pretty big cone from Corpus Christi up to areas near the Louisiana coast. So I think this is actually a decent cone here. So Eastern Gulf basically out of the picture, in my opinion, but definitely going to start strengthening a good bit, which is why it's going to avoid making landfall here near Belize, Guatemala, Honduras. It's going to avoid landfall there, but it's going to make landfall in Mexico, because it's going to be really strengthening. So it's going to lead it to go north, and then it could possibly either Texas or even Louisiana here. Check out the tracks. The tracks here, as you see, possibly 1 or 2 making this landfall on Honduras. I think this might just skin Honduras and not make a real landfall. But you see, we have tracks either going to Louisiana, or traps going to Texas. This one, AEMI, that won't happen. It will not go to Mexico really at all. It would have to be extremely weak here, but this actually seems pretty reasonable. I think this is actually a pretty reasonable cone. In my opinion, it's a pretty reasonable cone. So Houston, airs near, I think these general areas need to look out for a landfall. So if you're in Houston, if you're near the southwestern coast near Lake Charles in Louisiana, I think you guys definitely need to be on the lookout here. Intensity guidance, as you see, they actually show this possibly becoming a tropical storm as early as 12 hours or as late as 60 hours. I think this could possibly be named by tomorrow morning. And as you see, one actually had this going to a hurricane. Actually, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of this becoming a hurricane. Cat 1, I wouldn't rule out the possibility because it's going to be strengthening actually a good bit before affecting Yucatan Peninsula and Cancun. As you see, expected to make landfall on Saturday, correct? It's going to be strengthening a good bit before that. It probably won't even weaken over land because it's moving so fast. And that going over Yucatan actually might slow it down. And that's going to be slowing down over extremely warm Gulf waters. So I think a hurricane definitely isn't out of the picture here. But let's go check out what global models have to say. Let's take a look at the GFS here. Obviously, GFS hasn't been the most reliable this year, but as you see, GFS shows this being a tropical depression, 13 being 1,007 millibars in the next 48 hours, which is kind of hard. I find it hard to believe because it's already at 1,008. And then GFS shows actually possibly tropical depression 14 forming first, so that's interesting here at 1,004 millibars there. And as you see, the GFS shows tropical depression 13 making landfall actually for the Keys there, maybe even Miami. But look at what GFS shows for tropical depression 14, 994 millibar system heading for Louisiana. That's exactly what I think had happened. It looks like it's going to head for Texas and then hits Louisiana last minute there. But look what GFS shows. I think GFS is kind of absurd with this. I really do not believe the GFS on 98L or tropical depression 13. As you see, making landfall on the Panhandle or the Big Bend at 994 millibars. I definitely did not see that happening in my opinion. Really, I think a lot of people can agree with me on that. All right, CMC here shows tropical depression 13 being 1,004 millibars in the next 54 hours. I still think these global models are under forecasting this. I think this will be a lot stronger than they actually show, which is reasoning why all the tracks show Miami because they're under forecasting it. As you see there, this tropical depression 14 will be 1,005 millibars, making landfall on Saturday there at 1,005. As you see, look what the CMC shows. This storm shows what soon-to-be Laura will be doing, blowing up as it's going to be avoiding the Bahama Islands and make landfall at 984 millibars for possibly Homestead, Florida, if not Miami, at 984 millibars, and then going into the Eastern Gulf. And then CMC shows tropical depression 14 kind of just going to Bay of Campeche and just falling apart really. So I don't think the CMC is getting reasonable with tropical depression 14L. But look what CMC shows, making landfall for Panama City at 988 millibars and then going up into Georgia. I really don't think that's. I think that's. I wouldn't say it's not reasonable, but I really think that gradually, I think models are really under forecasting this. I really think they are, because really I think it's going to be possibly stronger than they actually show, which means it's going to go more north. But obviously, we're going to have to wait and see exactly. But NavGem shows this being 1,000 millibars, tropical depression 13 in the next 54 hours, which is more reasonable. And then it shows it going to 991, 986, and making landfall at 981 millibars over Miami, Florida, and then going up Florida. What I think is going to happen, I really think that this will end up going up Florida, whether it makes landfall here and goes up Florida, or whether it makes landfall right here and goes up Florida. I really think a lot of Florida get big impacts instead of going into the Gulf. I really don't know. I really don't have a feeling this will go in the Gulf. I really don't think this will go in the Gulf, 98L or tropical depression 13. But look what NavGem is showing for tropical depression 14. 982 millibar hurricane possibly heading for the Texas coast, may even be turning like that because it's strengthening so much. But really watching out global models here. Check out the H-Warp, which is actually a very accurate hurricane model here. As you see, they show it possibly really getting to some strength here, really trying to organize in the next 24 hours, 1,008 millibars, and then as you see, possibly 1,001 millibars in the next 40 hours, and possibly, let's see if this actually loads for me here. In the next 42 hours, 1,001 seems pretty reasonable. 995 millibars in the next 48 hours, and 992 millibars when it goes north of Puerto Rico. I think this is actually reasonable. I think it could be 992 when it goes over Puerto Rico. I think that's actually very reasonable. Let's check out actually how much it actually organizes though, convection wise. Actually, shall we check this out here? Let's check out what we have right now. So gonna definitely look very organized now. As we go the next 18 hours here, it's going to start to get convection back once again. Like I said, there's a little drier here getting into this low pressure, but expect it to come back together later today. And as you see, look at it, just blows up heading past when it goes north of Puerto Rico there. So definitely very interesting here. Let's check out the drier though. There's no shear, so we don't like to talk about shear, but there's a little drier to the west of this low pressure system. It's not much, but the low pressure is right here. It's like if it was right here, it would be fine, but it's right here. So it's kind of on that little outskirt there of that moisture bubble. It's actually my screen that way. But as you see, it's going to maybe possibly get a teeny little drier and then going to blow up once again because moisture will get back together and get its act together. So I think that's exactly why models are also under forecasting because of drier, but really this drier really won't do much to this storm at all. So guys, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I'll possibly do another forecast, possibly this early afternoon, maybe 3-4 o'clock. So stay tuned for another upload, guys. Bye, guys.